So it's time to go through my fish room again and take a look at one of my favorite species, the swordtails. You'll find quite a few different species in the fish barn, from some of the more common species to some of the more rare. So let's head into the fish barn and get started. The first fish I want to show you is the Xiphophorous Clemenciae, or brass swordtail. This fish was a rather recent discovery, having been discovered in Mexico in 2003 in Lake Catemaco. I'm currently keeping them in this 40 breeder in the downstairs section of the fish barn with some lemon drop bristlenose plecos, some Vallisneria, and a fair amount of hair algae. This fish gets to be about 5 inches long, and the males do have a fairly long sword. Unfortunately, I really don't have any males to show you right now, but I do have a ton of fry, so I'm really not worried about having males. While this tank isn't pretty, it definitely does do the job in terms of producing fry. These have been some of the longest standing residents here in the fish tank barn since I've had them since October 2019, and obviously the colony is still doing quite well. So we're going to stay in the downstairs of the fish barn and head over to another 40 breeder, which is home to my red swordtails, which I picked up at the Michiana Aquarium Club auction back in 2020. I originally started out with a male and 2 females, and while those fish are no longer with us, their offspring seem to be doing quite well. These fish don't share a tank with any other fish, and they've just been living in here with some floating Pogostem and Stellatus octopus. So let's take a look at the next 40 breeder with my black Berlin swordtails. I purchased these fish from the Big Fish deal in Maryland back in March of 2020. These fish were originally living with some Gadeids and were a little bit slow to get started in terms of fry production, but have been doing quite well since I moved them onto a tank of their own. While these fish do breed true at a fairly good clip, they will drop some fry that will look almost exactly like a pineapple sword. I'm assuming at some point these fish were crossed with pineapple swords to get the orange finish that makes them a Berlin swordtail. I'm pretty happy with how this colony is doing. They seem to be growing quite nicely in this 40 breeder with a variety of crypts and some other plants. So next up are my Xiphophorous Clemenciae that I also keep in a 40 breeder. You can definitely tell I like keeping swordtails in 40-gallon breeders. These guys share a home with a group of bristlenose plecos and some Corydoras rabaudi. These fish have a specific location of Puente Chin Luis in Mexico. I've had these fish for quite a while, having purchased them at the Grand Valley Aquarium Club auction in October of 2019. Over the past few months, this tank has had some ups and downs, but fortunately, it's starting to come around. I'd added some mollies about 8 or 9 months ago that had some disease issues, which transferred to all the other fish in the tank and caused me to have some losses. I've been able to treat the tank with the Med Trio, but there were some ups and downs in that process. Thankfully, this tank and the fish have stabilized, and now they're doing much better. I've not seen some fry in a while, for obvious reasons, but I'm looking forward to getting these fish back going again and starting to get some fry produced and get some fish out to some of my other fish keepers. So now let's head upstairs and check out my Xiphophorous Nezahualcoyotl, also known as the Northern Mountain Swordtail. You can find this fish in the wild in the province of San Luis Potosi in Mexico, and this fish will get to be about 2 to 2.5 inches long. I'm currently keeping this group in a 20-gallon aquarium, but at some point I might move them up to a 29. I was able to add to this group recently at the Chicago Live Bear Association Rare Fish Auction, so I was glad to be able to build this colony back up. This is a fish that I've struggled with in terms of fry production, which I mostly account to predation because these fish are notorious fry eaters. So as you can see, I definitely need to add some more plants to this tank as well. The next group of fish we're going to look at are my Xiphophorous Mayae that I purchased back at the Kili Carnival last year. These fish grow extremely large and will get to be about 6 to 7 inches, including the size of the sword, with a body size of about 4.5 inches or so. These fish are found in the wild in Honduras and Guatemala, where they inhabit slower streams, often with the presence of Vallisneria. I currently have mine in a 29-gallon tank, but need to work out a plan to move them to a larger tank soon. I've actually had them drop fry, but unfortunately, only one of them has survived so far. I'm hoping that number will improve once I get them to a larger tank. Next up, we have my Xiphophorous Alvarezi that I purchased from the auction at the ALA. This trio lives with a group of Goiter River rainbow fish in a 55-gallon tank. I really do like the red sheen on this fish, which I find quite attractive. These fish will have a body size of about 3.5 inches, and while they do fine in smaller tanks, I have read that this species does better in larger tanks of about 3 feet long or so, which is why I have them in this 55-gallon aquarium. You can find this fish along the Atlantic slope of southern Mexico and Guatemala, where it's found in shallow pools with moderate current. I've not seen any fry from these fish yet, but with all things, it takes time, and I'll be patient while I work with this fish. So next up is my 29-gallon aquarium with my Xiphophorous Malinche, which is also known as the Highland Swordtail. I had purchased these fish off of Aquabid about a year ago, and they've done quite well for me, and I've been able to get some of the fry out to some of my other fellow fish keepers. You can find this fish in east central Mexico, and it will top out at about 2 to 2.5 inches in length. I also find their plaid markings to be pretty cool. I probably won't sell any of these fish for a while, since the colony has gotten kind of small, so I'm going to give it some time and let this colony recover. So I hope you enjoyed today taking a look at some of the more interesting fish here in the fish tank barn, the Swordtails. So let me know in the comment section which one is your favorite, and maybe some other swordtail species that I should get in the near future. So that being said, stay safe, stay fishy, and I'll catch you on the next video.